Welcome to the Penny for Your Thoughts podcast. This is your weekly insight into the small businesses of London. The Penny for Your Thoughts podcast feeds entrepreneurs motivation and inspiration, taking the best of what other people have already figured out and learning from their mistakes. So, if you want to learn more, keep on listening. Today we're going to be talking to Will Englander, who is the founder of The Root Co. The Root Co. is a sort of a new breed of ginger beer. It's super spicy, it's super fresh, it is not carbonated, it's almost like a long form ginger shot, which to me sounds perfect. We're going to be talking to Will about how his journey has been with The Root Co. He didn't found it too long ago, it's only been a couple of years, and he's done the process completely alone. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he found that going through, everything from the recipe creation, sourcing the ingredients, doing all his Instagram marketing, which is incredible, by the way, designing his cans, designing his website, cycling around London to deliver samples of cans to suppliers. It's really incredible to him talk about how passionate he is about his brand, and his market stall in Camden Passage as well is a key part of his business, and I think it's just really lovely to hear him talk about that. So without further ado, let's see what he had to say. Will, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Why don't we start the same way as we always do, chat a little bit about how you got going, where you started. I know you didn't start this very long ago, is that correct?
That's right. So I left my last job, which was as a management consultant here in London, in February last year, so that's Feb 21. And how I got going, I really just upped the ante on my ginger beer making at home. So I'd made a few batches of ginger beer. Initially, actually, I fermented it, so it had a little bit of alcohol in it. And then I started making a carbonated version on my weekends when I was still at OC&C. Mm-hmm. And then I just really kind of ramped that up and started making batches with higher frequency and cycling them out to my friends around London to get their feedback. And simultaneously I got a license for a market stall, which is very near my flat in Angel, which I still do every Sunday, and that is a great way to get a broader set of customer feedback. So that helped me refine the recipe from there, and then it was scaling and production and everything thereafter.
So it almost sounds like it was a little bit of like a lockdown project, is that correct?
I would say that it was definitely spurred on by lockdown, although I'd had the original idea back in, I think it was May 2018, okay, when I woke up from a general anaesthetic operation, believe it or not. I thought of two business ideas. One was using those airport body scanners for a really good fit with your clothes, and the other one was launching a ginger beer business, kind of halfway between a ginger beer, ginger shot vibe, and I decided that the startup costs with the ginger beer business were slightly lower, so I went for that. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about The Root Co. in general, like the brand, how where you see it going, and kind of give everyone a little bit of an overview of who you are. Sure,
absolutely. So The Root Co. is supposed to be exactly what I alluded to just before. It's supposed to be halfway between a ginger beer and a ginger shot, using my home recipe and a very simple recipe at that. So just ginger, lime, mint, cold pressed together, mixed with maple syrup and water. I use cold pressing because it gets all of the flavour out of the fresh ingredients, and I also use extra spicy ginger from East Africa too. But I guess the goal was always to create something that was a longer form ginger shot, bit more flavourful, lightly sparkling, and therefore a ginger beer that was slightly truer to the natural ginger mm-hmm. ingredient, which I think is really important. And I've tried to speak quite carefully and frequently in my communications with people about the health benefits of ginger too, because I do believe in, certainly for me, the anti-nausea and stomach soothing qualities are great. Also perks up my energy. I'm not a coffee drinker, mm-hmm. so in my previous job I would have a ginger shot for a bit of natural energy in the evenings, so I'm a big believer in that too. And it's also antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, loads of great things about ginger.
Brilliant.
Basically.
I hear it's also very good on a hangover.
Yes, that's right. I do my stall on a Sunday, I think, as I mentioned, and I get a bit of hungover traffic. To be honest, I'm sometimes hungover behind the table too. So yeah.
You are a one-man band. There's no one else currently in your company. What do you think that has, how has that been a challenge for you?
At points it is challenging. Specifically, I was thinking earlier about how useful it would have been to have someone else around to not only share the burden of the sales or the ops, but also just, to do mess around with some content. I'm quite big on my Instagram content at the moment, and right now it's fairly auto. It's kind of all me. I have a little kind of arm, an overhead filming arm, so I can, like a tripod, I guess. So I use that too, but it has been challenging at points, and I have felt stretched. But to tell you the truth, it's also quite liberating, because I have absolutely loved trying pretty much every aspect of the business myself. And yeah, it's, you put on many different hats, you try loads of different roles in any given day, and I think that variety kind of keeps it fresh and quite fun for me too.
Mm-hmm. And working by yourself, how do you think that has do you reckon that's changed you in any sort of way, shaped how you view work? Because I assume going from an office job where you're surrounded by people all the time to working literally alone all the time, messing around with recipes and doing all your marketing content and actually delivering the product around, it's a huge change.
So I don't know if it's necessarily shaped me, but it has definitely made me realise things about myself. And aside from trying lots of different things, which, as I said, I love, I think it's also made me realise just a bit more about me, and specifically how I like to interact with other people. Because I think, and strangely, no one's going to believe this, but I think I am quite an introverted person. So I really value time by myself. I like doing activities by myself. I like bread making. I like running. I like cycling by myself. There are lots of things that I'd very happily do on my own. Saying that, I'm very lucky to have lots of groups of friends, but I think one of the lovely things about the job I do now is part of the success will come from, or part of the success will inevitably come from me going out and meeting new people and making friends with new people, which I've always found really, really energizing. So I love being behind my market stall, for instance, and introducing someone new to the drink. And when a repeat customer comes back, I actually have, I would say, a group of friends I've made through the stall now, which is really fun. When they come back, that's such a nice, rewarding feeling. Because, as I said, this feeling of making friends, maybe it's a deep need to want to be liked, if I was being honest about it, but I really still get all of that nice social energy from just the way I have to behave and the things I have to do as part of this business, even though you're right, operationally I'm completely by myself. So
you started this, and I'm assuming you didn't have any prior knowledge on running a business.
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't understand what it would really involve on a day-to-day basis. I studied economics and I worked as a management consultant, and you might be tempted to believe that gives you a really good understanding of what it takes to start and run a business. But in fact, I feel like I've just had to learn some things along the way. And to be honest, there is still things I do that I'm not sure are totally by the book. I hope my VAT returns are. HMRC, if you're listening.
Don't worry, we can help out with that.
But yeah, I think it has just been a really good learning by doing experience, and certainly the nuts and bolts and getting into the nitty gritty of it, I had no prior experience of. There are some things that you just have to do. I do a lot of manual labour. I carry a lot of ginger beer boxes. I cycle around a lot, which I love because I enjoy staying fit anyway, but it's not something that I necessarily knew when I signed up for this. It's just kind of fallen into place.
So did you use any sort of resources to kind of learn along the way? What do you think the best resources that you've used have been?
The most valuable resources to me have probably been people. So I was very lucky that when I started, people were immediately interested and said to me, oh, you should speak to my friend X or my friend Y. There was a guy I spoke to in Norway who's an expert in branding. He'd done branding for a really cool, not microbrewery, quite a large brewery in Norway. And my friend put him in touch with me, and we just spoke about branding for like an hour. But yeah, I would say certainly when I started out, having that network of people to bounce ideas off of and get a bit of insight from was really, really handy. I haven't sat down with any textbooks. I think I have just kind of learned along the way. And the most important thing on that point is if you want to start, then you should just, create an Instagram handle and start posting stuff. Because during my first 3 months, I had a totally different Instagram feed to what you can see today. I hadn't even decided on a brand colour, didn't know it would be yellow. There were lots of decisions I've taken on the fly, but the most important thing is that you start working on something, learn from the experience of making it, and then improve it. And if that happens to be an Instagram, you can hide your old posts. Isn't that fantastic?
And if you were to go back a couple years and you were just starting out, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
So I'll go back to maybe December 2020, which is when I handed in my notice at OC&C. I would say big bit of advice is, sensible risk taking, I would say, would summarise it. Very near to when I started, so just before I launched my first cans, which was in May last year, I had a couple of really challenging production issues. One of them has been solved. One of them is, I would say, 70 or 80% solved. And I credit my naivety because I think it has led to me producing a nicer and more interesting product than otherwise. But I really didn't make life easy for myself because I just did everything so fast and was determined to do things really, really fast. So yeah, my bigger advice would be sensible risk taking, do things quickly and efficiently, but don't jump in, start buying fresh ingredients when you don't quite know yet how you're going to make the drink at scale. Because that was a dark time, although turned into a happy story because it got solved in the end. But I feel like that's more luck than expertise.
Sure. So it sounds like it's been a bit of a wild ride, excuse the cycling pun.
Very good, love that.
So far, I can only assume there has been a few low points, or is there any that you want to sort of share?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to give the impression that building a business from scratch is easy and straightforward, and sometimes you're not treated very nicely, and sometimes you email people many times and they never get back to you. And I'm always keen to be honest about that because everyone goes through it. You don't snap your fingers or overnight end up on the shelves of a major retailer. It involves quite a lot of work and persistence. So in terms of a particular failure or instance of failure I could highlight, I remember there's a coffee chain here in London, which will remain nameless, but I remember going and I dropped a big box of samples off for them because I was quite keen to get things moving, get their attention, get them trying the drink, and then I stopped back in 5 or 6 different times to collect feedback. And the first time I stopped in, they were like, the team in the shop, which is connected to the office, were like, oh, we loved the drink, really good. We're just waiting for the guys in the office. Hopefully they'll like it too. Anyway, I had basically a repeat of that conversation the subsequent times. And then there was one day where it was absolutely pelting down with rain, and the manager in the coffee shop, who knew I'd turned up loads of times, I think she was getting a little bit impatient with me too, and my kind of persistent approach, which is maybe my fault. But she she kind of pointed me next door to the office. So I went and stood at the office and was about to ring the bell when people came out. And I had a really nice chat with them. And I was stood there in the rain getting rained on. But it's always great for me to meet other people. It just gives me encouragement rather than emailing a blank digital wall. So anyway, I spoke to them and they said, oh, don't worry, we'll chase up on it for you. And then I was like, brilliant, fantastic. So I cycled away, very wet, but feeling kind of like progress had been made. And then I got an email later that day, quite quickly, from the accounts department in the coffee chain, which didn't even necessarily make sense why it would be the accounts department emailing me. But it just said, hello, thank you for dropping samples. We're not interested. And then like a sign off, like nothing. No constructive feedback, nothing about, these are the reasons why we're not interested, no check back in 6 months. The kind of things that people will usually do to either soften the blow or give you a bit of encouragement as a small business owner, founder, worker, whatever role you have. So that can make you feel kind of sad because you put yourself out there a lot. You create something, in this case I created it literally in my kitchen. I designed the labels on PowerPoint. You're putting yourself across and you turn up a bunch of times and make a lot of effort, and that's rewarded with not very much.
But I can imagine that like persistency can never really be a negative thing. I can imagine there's also lots of times where it's been very rewarding for you. That's
right, yes. And particularly rewarding is when I have been persistent and that leads to a shop trying the drink and on their shelves and then it goes really well. I can think of a couple of instances where that's happened and that feels really great. In fact, on Tuesday this week, I cycled to one of the shops and I was chatting to the team there. I was like, do you remember when I was turning up here again and again with samples and meeting you guys? So yeah, it can work both ways. It's just some people don't necessarily they may not have the time, they may not have the appreciation for kind of the miles you put in, whether that's physically on the bicycle or just in terms of effort.
And as you know, on the podcast we do always have a round at the end where the previous guest has left a question for you. The previous guest was Graziano and Matthias from Parafante Liqueurs, and they've left you a very juicy question. They want to know what the most embarrassing thing was, the most embarrassing thing that happened to you while you were building the company.
So I'd say I'm still very much building the company, so I'm going to allow myself the time up until literally this very instant. I was actually on my way delivering to my first ever shop called En Route down in Clapham. They got in touch with me because they do East African food and because Route is in their name. And I was honestly thrilled to have my first shop. And on my way down there, I was cycling along just over Blackfriars Bridge, and a bike slammed on the brakes in front of me, and consequently I got pushed into a pedestrian crossing the road, which was that luckily the pedestrian was totally fine because I managed to brake very suddenly, but I went flying.
Of course.
I turned up with dented cans. It was a pretty embarrassing first experience. Although I saw them on Tuesday this week again, and we were kind of jokingly remembering it. That was last May. Falling off your bike is never fun. I'm getting increasingly better at falling off though, which I think is an important skill.
You can fall skillfully now.
Exactly, or in a way that protects all of my vital organs. And I always wear a helmet.
And cans, I hope.
Yes, the cans are important. They're quite well boxed up, so theoretically, unless it's a big crash, they should be fine. But always wear a helmet. Fall carefully and gracefully. Not necessarily gracefully, carefully.
Well, it's been lovely chatting to you today.
You too.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you soon.